Now, you were telling me about some of this discussion that they had, and why are we in these bodies that don't move? You want to share a little bit about that, and how that impacted actually somebody that you know?
Yeah, one of the beginning chapters is called "Who Are We?" They come to life in a Chinese factory for a short period of time, and then they lose consciousness again, so to speak, and then they wake up in a shop in London, an antique shop, and
With Sam the cat.
With Sam the cat, yes.
In fact, there's a
as a matter of
picture
fact,
too.
I would be happy to read just that segment, and then I'll tell you the story, because
Okay.
it might be quicker for me to just read it than to set it up. So they're in the shop. It's they're able to talk to each other. They've been yelling at people that walk by in the store, and it's like nobody hears us. And why can we talk to each other? Why can we hear each other? But we don't know what's going on. No, they don't even know why they even have thoughts or abilities or able to communicate with each other. So this is kind of the part of the story where we find that conversation taking place, and they're really questioning who are we and what are we and what is our purpose. So starting on page 26, well, that cat looked at us. Did you see him? And I'm very concerned that he had a hungry look in his eyes. He might just decide to eat us, said the wise man figurine, who looked like a plump little Arab. The African wise man spoke solemnly. I don't think we have anything to fear from that cat, but I do fear that our existence may be purposeless and useless. We're trapped in bodies that do not move. We can think and reason, but our voices cannot be heard. I fear that such a dismal existence can only mean one thing. We're being punished for some past wrongs, of which we cannot even remember. There was a momentary silence while the other two pondered the African's words. If we did something wrong and are being punished, then why don't we remember it? Asked Uncle. That doesn't make any sense, added the Arab. The African was unperturbed by their protests. It makes perfect sense. If we have done something terrible and have been stuck here in these bodies as punishment, we might become content by saying, well, we deserve what we have become. But because we don't know who we are or why we're here, the punishment is even worse, because we don't even have the satisfaction that comes from knowing we deserve our fate. Uncle was not convinced. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Not that I've heard a lot. I refuse to believe such an unfounded bunch of supposing, assuming, conjectural rubbish. And then I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. There's some other things that happen in the story, and by the end of this chapter, Uncle and Chip, which we don't find out their names until later in the book, we sum up the chapter this way. By the end of the day, even Uncle feared that maybe it was true. Maybe they were being punished for some past wrongs that none of them could remember. The plump Arab fretted all day, but he desperately wanted to be optimistic. Oh, I really hope I'm not a bad person, but I guess if I am, I'm glad I don't know that I'm a bad person. He smiled bravely to himself. He was glad he could at least think of something positive. The daylight faded into dusk, and then darkness fell. So, the story that goes along with reading that part of the story, and then later on they find out what their purpose is, and I'm not going to spoil the story there. You have to read the book to find out how they found out their purpose and why they were put here on Earth and created the way that they were. But I actually, our grandmother, Eleanor, she was in the nursing home in Torrington, and when I had my manuscript finished and we're working on editing and that sort of thing, she was very excited to know that I was going to be publishing a book, and really proud of me, and we'd had conversations about it, where her husband had passed away, Grandpa Warner had passed away, and she was going through a dark time, feeling pretty down and depressed, and she was wheelchair bound and couldn't, get out, so I decided to, bring my manuscript in. It was just a good way to spend time with her and hopefully just cheer her up a little bit. So as I'm reading the manuscript, and as I read through those chapters, it didn't even dawn on me. Sorry, I'm going to get choked up telling the story. But I looked up as I was reading that, being stuck in a body that can't move, feeling like you don't have a voice in the world. I looked up and there was a tear in her eye. And, excuse me. But it was just a real moving moment for me. It was a real God moment for me. I at that point I realized, this story really has the potential to touch lives in ways that I never even thought of. It's a fun, action-filled story, but there are some of those little moments in the story, those little heartfelt moments in the story that it didn't really dawn on me until that happened that, you know, this book really has potential to touch people's lives that I'd never really thought about, having even written the whole thing. And you know, that day she said, "Thank you for coming." She goes, "You knew I needed to hear that, didn't you?" I said, "Well, I wanted to spend time with you, but I didn't really know that the story would touch you that way." So, you know, that's another one of my favorite parts of the book, just because I had that experience with Grandma. She's passed on now, so she didn't get to see the actual book in publication, so I imagine she's looking down from heaven and smiling about it right now.